Okay, with this design, there were a couple things that I did see in the um, outline view that were a little finicky for stitching that we're going to talk about first, and then we're going to talk about the shadow a little bit. So first of all, I'm going to zoom in on the S here, and the reason it struck me is because I took the S and I changed it from a complex fill to a satin stitch. And when I did that, it gave me all kinds of weird angles. And you can see that in the 3D view. You can see that this angle here. And that's when I noticed that I have some jagged areas in here that I need to clean up. So what I did with the main areas of the lettering, or the foreground lettering, is I did go through. I went to the outline view and I went in. I zoomed in at the top here because that's where the issues are. And I went in and I changed these areas. I cleaned them up a little bit. So in the outline view with it right click selected, it is shaded in gray, meaning we can work on it. After I zoomed in, I'm going to right click to deselect the zoom in tool, and I'd like to turn on my edit mode. With the edit mode turned on, I just left click up here, or I can go up to outline and edit outline mode, make sure there's a check mark next to it. The first thing that I did was there's a little bit of a point here, so I right click and on that point and delete it. And then what I can do is I can right click, hold, and drag and kind of drag that down. And you can notice here that now I'll have a little bit of a gap. We will eventually delete these shadows and actually do the shadows right within the IDS software. The next thing that I did is kind of pulled this guy down a little bit and make that go straight across. I'll do that in a second, but with that adjust tool, but I also have an adjust tool in here that I can use called adjust with an arc, and this adjusting tool that I'm going to use is going to be adjust with a line. So I am going to activate these tools by going up to outline, and first we'll do adjust with an arc. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from here, left click on the outline, up to here, left click on the outline, and I define the segment. I place my cursor over the segment, left click to select the segment, and now I can adjust it and put in a new arc there. Once I'm happy with that arc, I left click to adjust. I'm still in the tool, so I'm going to come from here to here. I'm making 2 left clicks on the outline to define the segment. I then select the segment and bow that segment to where I need it and left click to set it. So I'm going to work from here to here, kind of bow that segment in a little bit, and then I'm going to press escape to get out of the tool. With being out of the tool, I can actually left click, hold, and drag on these nodes, and that will move them. If I right click, hold, and drag in between the nodes, I can adjust it with an arc here. Now I'm going to go up to outline and adjust with a line, and I'm going to go from here to here, select the define the segment, then select the segment. Once I left click one time, it'll adjust it with a straight line. I'll press escape to get out of the tool. If I do need to nudge that up to make that completely straight, I can do that. So what I did is I actually went through each letter and right click on the letter. This is the H. If I want, I can take the yellow by left clicking on the yellow color chip and turning it invisible by the eyeball at the top here. And that way that shadow is not in my way. I can take these, make them straight, kind of fix them up a little bit right in here. So I scroll up. This is a little bit of a bowed arc, so what I did with the red line is I placed my cursor over the red line, right click, hold, and drag. And remember, it is highlighted red because it is right click selected. So I'll scroll up. This one's a little bit sideways, so I'm going to bring it out. It's still a little bit bowed, so I'll right click, hold, and drag and try to make that straight. And as I go through here, I'm just inspecting every letter. The E looks great. Right click inside the R here. If I left click, hold, and drag on that node, it allows me to change it. And I'm just slightly moving my mouse. So I just went through all the letters and cleaned them up a bit. And after I cleaned them up, I went in and regenerated my stitches. There's the I, we'll bring that down. There's the F, first one. This one's a little bit bowed, so I'm going to bring this up to where it's about at the same point, and then right click, hold, and drag on this red line and make it straight, nice and straight. Oops. This one I will bring up. So in changing these, it's also going to have to change that shadow. So I want to make that nice and straight with a right click, hold, and drag. Scroll over, right click on this F. This one looks good. I'm just going to bring that down. Trying to keep the vertical straight along with the horizontal. Then here's that other S. And I've got the same issues as I did before. So I'm going to bring this guy down. I can also right click and delete this point. Right click, hold, and drag. Right click. Actually, with this one, I want to use adjust with an arc. What I did is I right clicked again inside that area, and it allowed me to pull up those tools. So I'll choose adjust with an arc. Left click here, left click here, left click to select the segment, left click to set the segment, right click to deselect the tool. So I'm going to go outline, adjust with a line, start here, end here, left click, press escape to get out of the tool. I'll also kind of bring this out a little bit, kind of widen it. And if we look at it, I'm going to hit A on my keyboard. It gets me to zoom all. You can see it looks a lot better. This F here, let's check this area. It's still a little bit bowed. So I'm going to right click, hold, and drag and bring it up. Again, we'll do 1 to 1. And that looks much nicer. So let's go ahead and generate our stitches. Now we can still see the yellow because we are in the 3D view. If I get out of the 3D view, you can't see it because the yellow is invisible. I can left click on this arrow here and select all invisible and then turn them back visible. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete this shadow here. I'm going to left click on the yellow area and then do a control delete, and that deletes all of my yellow. The other thing that I'm going to do is take this S, the second S, and move it to the bottom. So I'm going to right click and say move to bottom. So now it stitches S-H-E-R-I-F-F-S. The thing with that is that this is good for a shirt or something similar, not a hat. With a hat, I typically want to start on the inside and move out from each side. I'm actually going to take this and move it back to auto judge. When I do that, the first thing I'm going to do is create the shadow, and then the second thing I'm going to do is optimize the stitch order for a hat. Optimizing the stitch order for a hat is going to help it, help the registration and make sure things stitch a lot closer together and things like that. It's just going to keep that stitching, kind of in line with each other. But the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to left click on this black color chip that allows me to select all the area or all the areas that are black in this design. And then I'm going to go up to accessories and create shadow. When I do that, it allows me to choose the direction of the shadow, and you can see the blue is the foreground and the black is the shadow. So I'm going to bring this up to about what I think the shadow should be. So that's the direction. I can either left click, hold, and drag it here, or I can actually input my own direction, and it'll change as soon as I hit the tab key. The other thing I'm going to do before I change any other settings is to actually change the color to yellow and press OK. You can see there's the color there. This is going to be the width of my shadow. And here I put 3 millimeters. And then the reverse compensation is how far inside the foreground it's going to go. So it's going to overlap a little bit. And I'm going to make that like 0.8. And again, I'm working in millimeters. I'm going to press OK. And when I press OK, it'll create the shadow for me. So you can see there's the shadow outline, and I'm going to hit the go button, and it's going to put the shadow in there for me. Now, one thing I do want you to notice is that it is going to stitch the yellow first and then the black, but if I look and zoom in closely here and go to my outline view, you can see that it does overlap into that area, and this is going to help with the registration. The second thing I'd like to do is make sure that things are going to stitch together. It's going to stitch the yellow and then the black, but the stitching order that I want is that I want it to stitch the yellow of the R and then the black of the R. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, hold, and drag all of the components of the R. I'm going to, you can see that it takes the shadow as well as the foreground or the black, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say move to bottom. I want that to actually stitch first. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the E, right click, hold, and drag around the E, right click, move to bottom, right click the H, right click, hold, and drag, and then right click and move to bottom. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing everything down to the bottom, and then in turn everything will move up. So I'm going to take this, move to bottom. So I started with the R, went backwards, and then I'm going to start with and then I'm going to go back to the I, move to bottom, and actually I can select, well, I'll select these three, move to bottom, right click, hold, and drag, move to bottom, right click, hold, and drag, and move to bottom. Right click off to the side, we're going to regenerate our stitches. Now what's going to happen is that if we look at it, this is not very well optimized for for production reasons, but it's going to sew much better on your hat, and that's because it's going to show the shadow and then the foreground right after it, and then so it's going to sew the shadow of the R and then the R. Then it's going to sorry, I can't talk. It's going to sew the shadow of the E and then the E, so on and so forth. So this is going to be better for cap stitching, since with cap stitching you want to sew the detail or the outline as close as possible to the area. So we rerouted the stitches, and then the other thing I want to do is that sometimes we have to go in and look at our stitch angles, and we're going to start with the first lettering, the R. And if I zoom in on the R here, I can look at the angles, and the angles look good to me for this piece. If I scroll over to the E, which is the next piece, these angles are giving me some problems, I think. I've got some really extreme angles here, and if I go to the angle view, if I right click on here, you can see that that extreme angle right there. What I'm going to do is I'm just left clicking, holding, and dragging, moving that angle, and then this one right here, I'm going to left click on each one, and then after I hit generate or go, you're going to see it's going to look much smoother. And this bottom one you can kind of compare. So I'm going to right click on this one, then go to my angle view. I'm going to kind of move the angles with a smoother transition, especially with this small thin satin stitch. This looks much better, and press generate. Then we're going to go to the H, we're scrolling over. This one, what I'd like to do is actually have it stitch completely horizontal, starting at the top. Right click inside the area, and I can add more guidelines. So left click, hold, and drag, and that's adding more stitch angles. So this one here, if I want to delete a stitch angle, I can left click on it and then hit the delete button. Don't hit control delete, because that will actually delete the whole area. So I'm going to come all the way across here. I'm left clicking and then left clicking, holding, and dragging. So I'm just fixing the angles in here, and then I hit go. You can see it's gonna look much nicer when we do that. This one, if I go to the stitch angle, and if you're asking, well, how do we know what to change? I'm Unfortunately, it's a little bit with just kind of, with experience, knowing what to do and what to change, how things are going to stitch better. If you look at these stitch angles, those are actually your satin stitches, and if you understand the how the satin stitches turn and things like that, you're going to understand better why we're changing these things. So, just kind of changing. And then I'll hit go. You can see those things change. Then I'm going to come all the way back over to the eye, and we're going to change those angles. So I'm just going ahead and moving these around. Right click, add stitch direction guideline, and I am in the angle view. So make sure that you are in the angle view when you are doing this, and that will allow you to make those changes. So I'm just kind of having less of a turn here for my satin stitches. A little bit easier for it to stitch. And all I'm doing again is just left clicking, holding, and dragging. Left click, hold, and drag. Left click, and then left click, hold, and drag. Generate my stitches. Go back to the angle view. I'm on this last one. And I'm going to go ahead and just pull this out. Add another stitch direction guideline. Right click on this guy. And then generate my stitches. So this is going to look a lot nicer as far as the stitching goes. Now, what's going to fix the problem, I think, ultimately is the stitching order, making sure the shadow stitches and then the letter stitches, and then the shadow and then the letter. If you do it to where it's going to stitch all the shadow and then all the letters, there's more room for movement in the hat itself, because the hat is not being held as far as the frame goes. With a cap frame, you have less, I guess less of a hoop that goes around it. It's holding it on the one side. So stitching things close together on caps and even jacket backs, because there's more movement in the fabric with a bigger hoop, it will help with your registration immensely. So I hope this helps. If you do have any questions, let me know. Oh, and one more point is that another thing that's going to help is that that overlap that you have in here, that's going to make it line up a little bit better. So I hope this helps. Again, if you do have any questions, please let us know. You can call us at 877-724-6400. Thank you.